I'm joined now by Nela Richardson. She's ADP Chief Economist and Head of ADP Research Institute in the U.S. Nela, thank you so much for joining me today. Now, we're seeing dismal economic growth figures out of China today. For you as an economist, what's your reaction to this news?
I think it's really important news because China was the growth driver heading into the pandemic, and we've seen a reversal of that heading out of it. And so what that means in terms of the world order, in terms of the economy, is really important. China is not just important directly in the fact that they impact global growth through their consumption base. They're also an important passageway. It's not about just selling to China. It's also about selling through China. And so there is some good news here. The reversal of some of these very strict COVID policies will help that passageway for the rest of the world to get their goods and services through China, but that direct impact of Chinese growth on the global economy is still missing. And without the restoration of it, we will not see the economy on a worldwide scale rebound in the way that the world really needs it to right now.
Now, we've been seeing consumer prices growing quite strongly the last several months. You're doing a session on living wages here in Davos today. Tell me more about that.
So living wages is a global issue. It's an issue that doesn't get talked about a lot. But there was always an understanding from the institution of the minimum wage in the United States that companies don't always pay a living wage. That is a wage that covers basic necessities like housing, healthcare, education, fuel, energy, food. And we're looking at this at a time when inflation has increased the price of all of these things worldwide. So it's a conflation of the minimum wage, which many countries have adopted, but also the high rates of inflation and shortages in basic necessities around the world, like affordable housing. So what does a living wage mean after the pandemic? It's even more important than ever that workers actually can provide for themselves and their family. So this panel that we're doing here at the World Economic Forum will get into the heart of those issues and talk about not just wages, but wages in the context of slower growth and higher inflation.
Well, talking about slower growth, the majority of economists surveyed here by the World Economic Forum said they do expect a recession in 2023. What is your take on this, and what do you think that means for the vast majority of people who don't have the privilege of being here with us at Davos this week?
Right. So again, it's not just about global growth. It's global growth slowing down when inflation hasn't yet returned to normal levels in many areas of the country. And the difference between this year's recession, if it happens, and recessions are always different, is that there are more than one drivers of a recession. In China, it's the COVID zero policies. In the US, it's the high rates of inflation and the fiscal stimulus that caused it, and the aftermath of higher interest rates because of the Federal Reserve's attempts to rein in inflation. And in Europe, it is the war in the Ukraine and the impact that war has had on prices, especially food and energy prices. So three totally different drivers of a potential recession. That means this recession has many layers, it's very entangled, and it's very complex. It could mean that it's softer in some areas and felt more profoundly in others. And we don't really know how it will play out, but for the millions who are part of the global economy, it's important to remember that it's really wages that impact workers. And if wages continue to be robust as it is in many places, like the United States, because of tight labor markets, then we'll see some management of higher inflation, slower economy. There's a lot to work out, but the idea I think that you'll see in that outlook is that hopefully this recession is not as deep as otherwise would be if we didn't have such strong labor markets in advanced economies.
ADP Chief Economist Nela Richardson, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.